Hello and welcome to Adapt or Perish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Ian Averill, and today we're talking about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
You might be thinking, what? They're actually doing this? Is picture book. They turn it into a movie. I have here, can I tell you my secret? Do you know why we're doing this?
Oh, I didn't realize it was a secret. Why are we doing this?
Because I fucking love this movie so much.
I know. I enjoy it a great deal.
Also, the book is wonderful.
Yes.
Like, I should just say this at the beginning of every mini episode. This is one that's been on the list for a really long time, and we never got to it. Because it never would have made sense to do a full-length episode about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, but mini episodes, oh, it's perfect.
So this was one of my absolute favorite picture books.
You're talking about the 1978 book, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs by Judi Barrett and Ron Barrett?
Yes, I am. What was your childhood relationship with this book?
Oh, I fucking loved it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're in the same boat there.
I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think this is one of the greatest children's books ever written.
That is a bold statement, but I will stand behind it with you.
It's incredible. It does everything that a good picture book should do.
Mm-hmm.
I should read a back of the book just so people understand. I'm holding a copy of it. If food dropped like rain from the sky, wouldn't it be marvelous? Or would it? It could, after all, be messy, and you'd have no choice. What if you didn't like what fell? Or what if too much came? Have you ever thought of what it might be like to be squashed flat by a pancake? It's probably one of the least helpful backs of the book I've ever read.
What is it even talking about?
Like, who is it for?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love this book. I had not read it in decades.
Yep, ditto.
And I feel like I would have always said that I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It's fantastic. I mean, I didn't even, when the movie came out, I remember being really excited about it because I was really into the people that made it.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I don't think I went back and reread the book.
I don't think that I could have found my childhood copy. I think that's long gone. I wasn't gonna make the trouble of paying $6 for a copy of a book for something like that. I'll only do that if I'm doing it for a podcast, you know?
Yeah, if only there was a place to get free picture books that you could actually take home and read. And you just have to return them at some point because they're, you know, they don't belong to you. They belong to someone else. I wonder if someone's going to invent that.
Well, of course that exists, but this is, if I cannot find my childhood copy, which I cannot, I have tried and it is not anywhere to be found. I actually want to have a copy of this. Jeremy's just reading the book now, you guys. He's just got it open at his desk, and he's just flipping through it and not saying anything.
It is one of the most beautiful children's books I've ever seen in my entire life. It does. So I was thinking about this. I feel like there are, obviously this is reductive, but I'm trying to illustrate a point here. But like, let's say that there are two styles of illustration in children's books.
Mm-hmm.
At one end of the spectrum, you have the ones that are stark, just the character, no background. I'm talking about like Mo Willems and stuff like that. I got a kid who's super into the Elephant and Piggy books. They're amazing. You know, just character on nothing.
Yeah.
And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, which is like, Where's Waldo?
Sure.
The illustrations are so dense. Those were the ones that I preferred.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those were the ones I reread the most because those were the ones that kept on giving. There was always more to discover every single time you read it. You just like, you could look over every little like square centimeter of the page and there was always a new joke or a new detail. And Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is one of those.
Big time. No, yeah, I love stuff like that. Like, do you remember like the 11th Hour?
Oh, sure.
And,
Yeah.
Man, I don't remember anything about it except that the illustrations were like so dense and kind of like part of the point of the book is you like finding stuff, right?
There was one that I loved when I was a kid, and I feel like I don't know where it came from because it's not one of the ones I feel like I hear about very much. It was called Prince What a Mess. Is that something that you were familiar with when you were a kid?
I don't believe so.
Prince What a Mess was an Afghan hound puppy.
Okay.
It was the same kind of thing where it's like there's so much detail in the pages.
Yeah.
There were so many things happening all over every page. And I just remember sitting with that book for hours, just kind of poring over the illustrations. And Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, like reading it now really brought me back to that because it's amazing. Yeah. Like I'm just going to bring up, like, I think my favorite detail from the entire book, because Ron Barrett's illustrations they're crazy, just amazing and detailed in a way that doesn't look like any other picture book I've ever seen.
No, just that like cross-hatching like illustration that he does is just, I don't know anything about art. It's just so burned into my brain. including many of the images. I made like a list of my favorite because my favorite images of food in this.
Oh,
book.
sure. Yeah.
It's some of the most appetizing illustrations I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. No, but my favorite illustration is in the page where they go to the restaurant that doesn't have a roof, where everybody's eating hot dogs at, Ralph's Roofless Restaurant. No cover, no minimum, always open. There's a little kid standing in line who's got Groucho glasses on. It's just this amazing little detail that has nothing to do with anything. It was just because when Ron Barrett was drawing it, he's just like, I want to put a kid here. You know what?
Yeah.
This kid's weird. He's wearing Groucho glasses. And he is, of course, in the movie.
Yeah.
Because that's how much care they took to reproduce all of it. By the way, just so everybody understands, the story of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is really the story of a town called Chewandswallow. And it's being told by a grandfather to his grandkids after an incident with a pancake in the face at breakfast. The grandkid got a pancake in the face. And he was like, hey, let me tell you about a town called Chewandswallow. Food rained from the sky. But then, things went bad. And they had to get out of there. So they escaped the island built on, using boats made of bread. And then the next morning, the kids are like, and then we got up and played in the snow. And there was our grandpa up at the top of a hill. And the sun was just coming up over the hill. And you know what? It looked like a big pat of butter on top of a pile of mashed potatoes. It's just a beautiful little thing. But it definitely gives you the indication that, like, this is a grandpa telling a sweet little story to his grandkids that he made up. But it's about, like the magic of imagination and things like that.
Exactly.
Weirdly, I feel like the book is more about imagination than it is about food.
Yeah, kind of is. Yeah.
But it does render food beautifully.
No, it sure does. The most appetizing images of food to me in this book are from the roofless restaurant, the guy launching himself over that lady's table to catch a hot dog.
Yeah, that's a good looking hot dog.
The Jell-O mold, obviously, and like the sunset Jell-O mold, which is just so gorgeous.
Not to skip ahead to the movie for a second, but so Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who we'll talk about in a little bit, who wrote and directed the movie in 2009, apparently the Jell-O mold was part of their pitch from like way early on. The movie basically recreates every image from the book, but this was one where there's like an entire scene that happens in the Jell-O mold, and they were like, that apparently was in there from day one.
Yep, that makes sense. A pancake on school, obviously.
Obviously. I also was a child who didn't like going to school.
One of the most iconic images from the book. There's a lot of stuff going on this page, but man crushed by double burger. It's part of a big spread. Yeah, Jeremy's looking for it in the... it's just one thing that's happening over on the side during some chaos.
Oh, I got it.
Everything in this page is good, but the double burger on top of the guy, and there's a guy trying to pry the double burger off this other man who's trapped underneath, and his hand is in this like pool of ketchup that's running down. I don't know. I just love that. I love the look of that burger.
Okay, I'm looking at one page right now, and like under the donuts rolling down the street, I never noticed until just now that there's alphabet soup that's in the street, and the letters in the soup spell lookout.
Yeah, you're informing me for the first time as well.
Never noticed that.
My favorite of the little, like, in the background where was Waldo type moments in that is the baseball game that isn't happening because Pie started, and in the background, the scoreboard readout thing says game called on account of Pie.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's pretty great.
It's just like this book. I would hang any single one of these images on my wall. So it's an incredible book. It really is.
Just great.
I guess one of the things I was thinking about with this movie, because in 2009 there was an animated movie, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who I mentioned, I feel like the thing they're most famous for is probably co-creating Clone High.
At that time, especially, that's the most thing they were most famous for.
And still, have they done other stuff?
Yes.
I thought they just did Clone High, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and that was it.
That's it? Yeah. No.
Yeah, okay, so they did the Lego movie. They were famously fired from the Han Solo movie. They're very, very closely involved with the new Spider-Man, Spider-Verse movies.
Yeah.
And they are just incredibly talented and incredibly funny, and I think they're amazing writers. And if it has Lord and Miller involved in it, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
So they needed to answer the question, what is their story going to be?
Right.
If they're basing it on this picture book that is literally just... here's a bunch of things that happen to this town, and then everybody leaves.
And I remember when they announced the production of this movie, and I don't feel bad about saying this. I don't feel any guilt, because when you think something is maybe not going to be good and then it turns out to be great, that's a wonderful thing. That's how everything should be. I wish everything was like that.
You wish everything was going to be bad and then it turned out to be great?
No. Good point. I'm not saying that I wish that I always thought everything was going to be bad, but like that's the best case scenario if you are unsure about something, obviously. And this is very, obviously this reminds me of when they, made The Iron Giant, another child's book that was very important to me and also very different from the book, but in a wonderful way. And I remember specifically when they announced this, because I remember I was like, I don't think so. I had that kind of attitude about them announcing a animated movie of this. I was very unconvinced. They showed me very fun movie.
I don't want to say it's the perfect example, but I think it's a perfect example of something that I've felt for a really long time. If you want to adapt something, and what you need to do is change the plot, so your plot is not going to be exactly the same as the thing you're adapting, the best thing you can do is just make it good. And this movie is, I think, perfect.
We'll get to it. I've got I love this movie.
Yeah.
I've got like a couple things, but yeah.
But I feel like the two things it has going for it, like one, I think it's perfectly made. The writing's incredible. I think the acting's incredible. The animation's incredible. Music's incredible. It's just so inventive. It's so smart about being silly. But at the same time, it embraces the book in a way that like the Iron Giant didn't.
Right. I mean, the design isn't even that close.
No, not at all.
The Iron Giant in the book looks like very, like they have the same kind of like the jaw thing. But like
counterpoint, in the book, I do remember the giant being very big and made of metal.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And in the movie, I don't know if you remember this, very big, made of metal. But
sometimes I feel like
I see your point.
Yeah.
But anyway, I still feel like when they made the Iron Giant, the book was an inspiration, maybe at the very beginning, but they went in a totally different direction and didn't really embrace the book.
Yeah.
This is a totally different thing where I think they love the book. And they wanted to make a great movie that celebrated every single page of the book, if not celebrating the story of the book. Because, like I said, the story is a grandpa tells a bedtime story, and it's about the crazy things you can imagine.
With giant food.
That's not what this movie is at all.
No.
In this movie, everything in it is real as a heart attack.
It's happening. Yep.
There's science in it.
Yeah, science in quotation marks.
I realize we're quite far into this, and I haven't even talked about the plot of this movie.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
So they've decided that they're going to do the thing that I think a lot of people who are adapting short children's books will do. I think the last time we talked about it on the show was when we did Fantastic Mr. Fox, because when Wes Anderson was adapting that, the book Fantastic Mr. Fox is like kind of the second act of the movie. So he figured out everything that happened up until the book started. And then he figured out a whole bunch of stuff that happened after the book ended. And this is doing the same kind of thing, where as the book starts, there's already food weather. Well, the movie is like, well, there's no food weather, but someone invents food weather. Now we have the food weather. Now we can do all of that. And they don't take too long to get to it. I love a kids movie like this that just like gets to it really, really quickly. So they get to the food weather, and then everything goes bad. And then they're in the third act, after everyone started to escape on the boats. Like that's kind of during the third act. There's also, of course, the thing that's not in the book, which is the giant battle in the sky between the inventor and his invention and all of the sentient food that it's creating to come at him and stand in the way. So I'm talking, of course, of Flint Lockwood, the hero of this movie, who invents the Flintstone, which is the greatest thing I've ever heard. I love how it's different every single time they say it.
Yeah. Bill Hader's especially good at saying it over and over again.
Bill Hader's amazing. I mean, I feel like I can just do the quick thing right now. Every single person who's in this movie is incredible. Bill Hader is amazing as Flint. He's also amazing as the Flintfer.
Yep.
He does both voices. I love the fact that, like, obviously Flint recorded his own voice doing the cool robot voice of his robot that turns water into food.
Yeah, that's obviously what happened. It's a great little detail.
His dad, Jimmy Caan, as Tim Lockwood.
Yeah.
Just by the way, just so everyone's clear, yes, the only things we're doing in mini episodes are either vampires or things in which James Caan plays the dad. So the thing they've decided to do with this movie is the plot they've crafted is a plot about a parent who doesn't understand his kid. Mm-hmm. Because Flint is a dreamer and an inventor. We see him grow up. He's the narrator of the movie. And his dad doesn't get him. His mom gets him, but she's dead.
Yeah.
And his dad, who speaks almost exclusively in fishing metaphors, which is wonderful, especially when little Flint is like, I don't understand fishing metaphors. Because one of the other things they've done is they've decided that the town is not called Chewandswallow. The town is called Swallow Falls. Mm-hmm. And their main export, it's on an island, and the main export is sardines. Till everybody realizes that sardines are super gross. And
it's a very funny joke.
After the food weather, the mayor, played by Bruce Campbell, in an incredible performance, decides to completely rebrand the town as Chewandswallow. And it's at that point that it kind of becomes the book, and they recreate like every image from it. Yeah. Of course, the thing, over the course of the movie is that Flint and his dad do start to understand each other. And yes, part of that involves his dad wearing the monkey thought translator that Flint created for his monkey Steve, who is voiced by Neil Patrick Harris. And says mostly, in much in the same way that his dad speaks almost exclusively in fishing metaphors, Steve speaks almost exclusively in the word Steve. Yeah. And I love Steve so much.
Yeah. Sometimes he says the food that he has in his hand.
Yep. They have such an amazing running gag of Flint thinking that Steve understands what he's saying, but just misinterpreting whatever food thing Steve is saying. Yeah. He's got the gauge on the Flintstoflumdifer that like goes from green to yellow to red. Steve, he's like, I don't know, Steve, what are we going to do? Like, this is happening and this is happening and the food is mutating. And Steve has like a hot dog with mustard on it. And Steve just goes, yellow. He's like, yes, it is in the yellow. We're fine. It's not in the red yet. We're okay. Yeah. I'm just repeating jokes. Can I tell you the 4 lines? I was keeping track of them. The 4 lines that like either I say or think about on a daily basis.
Please.
When Andy Samberg as Baby Brent, who is the aging celebrity in the town, who was on all the sardine cans when he was a baby, when he comes in the room and just like in that sing-songy way, just goes, "What's up, everybody?" Like I think about that. Like if I walk into a room, that's what I think. When the ice cream snow comes down and it falls at one point as the Neapolitan, and all the kids are running to the vanilla and the chocolate except the one kid who's like, strawberry's my favorite. When we haven't talked about Sam at all, but Sam, the love interest, when Flint is talking to Sam Sparks, who we should talk about for a little bit, she says, "Can you keep a secret?" And he just goes, "No." It's perfect. Yeah. But the number one thing, and I have to stop myself every single time it pops into my head. I have to stop myself from saying it, because if I did say it, no one would know what I was talking about. Okay. But there's a little montage where Flint is taking orders from all the people in the town, and everyone's saying pizza, like do all these foods. And there's just this one old guy who just goes with his, out of his toothless, drooling mouth, avocado. And I can't hear the word avocado without thinking of him. But if I did what I wanted to do and said that every single time someone brought up avocados, I would have fewer friends than I do have. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I don't. I keep a lid on that. I love this movie.
There's so many amazing jokes, audio jokes, visual jokes, hilarious lines, hilarious exclamations. It's rich in that.
It's the movie version of the book. Like, you can watch it. I really feel like you can watch this movie 100 times, and every single time, if you just pay attention to a different square inch of the screen, you'll see a different joke. Yeah. There's so much packed into it. It gets better every single time I watch this movie. It gets better. Yep. Better and funnier. Let's talk about, there's 2 characters. One we just mentioned, Sam Sparks, played by Anna Faris, who is another invention. She is the weather intern at the Weather News Network, and she has been sent to the island to report on the food weather. Actually, no, she's been sent to the island to report on something other than the food weather, but then the food weather happens, and she's in the right place at the right time.
I think she was just sent to what, like the mayor's,
World.
The mayor's announcement of Sardine World, right?
Yeah. What'd you think of Sam? I've heard different opinions about Sam.
It's one of those things, like, I don't think that she gets too underwritten. I think it leans too heavy on the one thing being an ironic look at the whole, like, oh, she's like got glasses and a ponytail, so, you know, or if she puts glasses and a ponytail on, then she's like not as attractive. And it's like, it's not actually saying, it's doing like an ironic reversal of that kind of,
Yes.
which is better. But it kind of like that, and the fact that she's actually like a smart nerdy person masquerading as not one is kind of all there is to the character. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like she has an inner life. I feel like there's stuff she loves.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I think the character has, I agree, the character has an inner life, so I don't think that it's that much of like an underwritten character or anything. This is just, I'm making it sound worse than I think it is, because it's connecting to my bigger problems, which are just with the whole, like, how not this film, but films like it portray like science and nerdiness, and like,
okay,
I don't know. It's not really here or there, because I love this movie. But anyway, that was just, what do you think of Sam?
I think Sam's great. I mean, to me, Sam represents something bigger about the movie that I think is the hardest trick that the movie pulls off.
Okay.
And it's also, I think it's going to be hard for me to talk about, because I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but I'm going to try. I feel like the thing this movie does is it's kind of desperate to thread the needle between having characters that are manifestations of tropes,
Mm-hmm.
and yet have them be emotionally engaging characters.
Yep. Okay.
And that is, I think that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Because I feel like usually what ends up happening is you can create emotionally engaging characters who are kind of built on how they subvert tropes.
Yeah.
Or you can have characters who are kind of undermined by how much they are just a trope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I'm struggling to think of a specific example, but I feel like everyone's had that thing of, like, you watch a movie and you realize that a character that you haven't really, you're not sure whether you like them or not, or whether you're engaged with them or not, but you realize, like, oh, they're just a trope. They're just, this is that character I've seen in everything else. And I feel like that's true about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Like, the dad is the dad who doesn't understand his kid and doesn't know how to express his emotions. And Flint is the crazy dreamer who's got his head in the clouds and doesn't know how to talk to people. Sam is the person who's just trying to fit in, and is kind of like, one of the things that I find interesting is the way she mirrors Flint, in that they both have the things they're passionate about, but he grew up on an island where he didn't need to figure out how to blend in, and she grew up on the mainland surrounded by way more people and made the decision to fit in.
Yeah.
And I feel like she goes back to her nerdiness, and he the thing he gets from her is that he learns how to talk to a person, which he never really knew how to do before.
Yes.
I like that part of it. But she is, to your point, like, there's a lot of tropes involved in her.
Yeah.
So everybody's a trope.
Even if it's nicely a thing where it's like the whole point is how ridiculous it is that some people treat her differently when she's got the glasses and ponytail on and not, even though if that's kind of like the point that the movie is making, which is good, but it's still, it's dealing in tropes. It doesn't mean that it's always adhering to them, which is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if I thought that the message of the movie was what every woman needs is a guy to tell her that she can embrace who she is because the world has told her not to. If that's what I thought the movie was saying, yeah, I would be, I'd be kind of mad about it.
A little bit of a problem with it. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that that's what it's saying either. But
no. But I also, I could kind of understand how someone would watch it and get that out of it, but I don't think that's what it's doing, even though Flint is encouraging her to be herself.
Right.
But I think the thing that ends up happening throughout the movie is that she, even though he might kind of like light the fire, she takes charge, and she is fully in charge of herself by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is good. But, going back to the trope thing for a second, the movie hangs a lantern on every single trope But,
Mhm.
and I'm worried this is going to sound naive, but the reason it works for me is that the characters so aggressively have no idea that they're in a movie where they're doing every trope. They just are existing. Like
Yep.
they are selling. They sold me on this being the emotional reality of these characters.
Yeah.
And that gets me empathizing with them, even
For
though
sure.
they are a trope. Because like Flint's dad, he doesn't know he's a trope. Tim has no idea that he's in a movie. He has no clue. There's none of that's another thing I really love about this movie too, is there's no ironic detachment. Every dramatic moment is delivered with 100% conviction. At no point do they ever bail on an emotional moment. The emotional moments happen and they feel really real and authentic. And that's one of the, like, I just think the needle they tried to thread with this movie is really delicate and hard to do. And for me, they did it perfectly.
I agree. Yeah, I don't know. There's just like, I guess it was going to be easier for me to put into words the minuscule things that are holding me back with this movie. But I guess I can't. It's like, a big one for me is Flint's, once again, this is not exactly this movie's problem. It's the way that a ton of things like this treat like kids who are growing up and are aspiring to be scientists and inventors. And I guess the number one problem I have with it is that it's written by a bunch of artists
Yes.
who treat like being a nerd and outsider because you like plays and movies and books, and being an outsider because you're into science and math as being the same.
Okay.
And they're not, in my opinion. And I don't think they should be. Now, I know this is like a thing that you're laughing at me for taking this so seriously.
A little
about
bit,
this
but
movie.
also I'm here for it.
And I don't blame you, which is why I love this movie. But like also the way that it just like, I don't know, just the inspirational stuff about Flint's dreams. That is a trope that I don't like. I think is what is the little thing that holds me back.
I'm going to give you one reason why I think it has to be that way.
Okay.
How else are you going to do it in such a way that your main character, and I want to be clear, if you've chosen to go in this general direction, how are you going to sell that your main character invented a robot that turns water into food?
Yeah.
Without painting him in the way that they paint him?
You're the one with the pitches, Jeremy. I like solving problems is not my forte.
It's not your job.
But yeah, anyway, all that stuff, that was, I have a very fragmented idea of what I mean, but I love this movie. It's very, very funny.
I guess, looking at the cast list, I realized that there is a very specific reason why it hit me even more this time. I think this is the first time I've watched it since my son was born. Obviously, one of the core relationships is Flint and his dad not really figuring out how to talk to each other. But there's another father-son relationship in the movie that Flint constantly sees as the example of an amazing father-son relationship, as a father who loves his kid. And this is Officer Earl Devereaux, who's the cop in the town. Played by Mr. T.
That's right.
They wanted Mr. T. They got Mr. T. He's amazing. I love his haircut. Did you notice his haircut, right?
Yeah, it's the opposite of his real haircut.
Yeah, it's an opposite of a mohawk. He's got all the hair except the stripe down the middle. And his son, Calvin.
That's right.
And my son's name is Calvin. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. That'll just make emotional connection for you out of nothing.
It will. That's all it is. Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. And I want to thank you especially for joining me on Jeremy Talks About a Movie He Loves for half an hour.
And I love to. Don't let my slight holding back deter you. This movie is wonderful.
I'm just flipping through the book again, and like these burgers are so appetizing.
I know.
They just like I could just reach out and touch them. They're amazing.
All the food in this book I would describe as plump, which is a
gross.
Deal with it. That's how I refer to it. It's very appetizing.
All right. Well, I think let's do quadrants really quickly. Do you think that Phil Lord and Chris Miller and all the other people who made this movie, do you think they cared about the source material?
Yes, I do.
Do you think it was successful?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's right. You do. Well, everybody, this has been Adapter Parish. You can always find us online at adapterparishcast.com. There you'll find our social links, contact information, show notes for this and every episode, and more. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with Around the World in 80 Days.
Bye, everybody.